Bella's crayons scratched softly against the paper, a whisper in the quiet of her bedroom. She sat cross-legged by the window, her small frame bathed in the gray light of a fog-choked afternoon. The German shepherd took shape under her hand, its ears sharp, its eyes like twin moons, watching her from every drawing she'd made since the accident. She didn't know why she drew him, only that he was there, always there, in the reflections of her mind. Elise paused in the doorway, her heart twisting as Bella's tiny fingers trembled, pressing harder as if the dog could step out of the page and into the room. Outside, the fog curled like a held breath, muffling the world. Bella's lips moved silently, naming something she couldn't yet say. The yard stretched beyond the window, a tangle of weeds and forgotten things, a rusted tricycle, a deflated ball half buried in mud. The coastal town's salt-heavy air clung to everything, coating the fence in a sheen of decay that mirrored Elise's frayed nerves. She hated this house, its sagging porch and peeling paint, a monument to the life she'd lost with David. Bella's eyes never left her sketchbook, but the fog seemed to press closer, heavy with secrets. A faint scratching came from the fence like claws on wood, too soft to be sure. Elise frowned, glancing out, seeing only mist. Bella's crayon paused, her breath catching as if she heard it too. The yard held its silence, but something waited in the haze, unseen. The bang came like a crack in the sky, a car backfiring down the street, sharp and unforgiving. Bella's body went rigid, her crayons clattering to the floor like fallen soldiers. She dropped beneath the table, curling into a ball, her sketchbook clutched to her chest like a shield against the storm inside her head. Loud, too loud like that. Night, the shadow man yelling, Daddy's car, gone, gone in the dark. Her thoughts, fragmented shards of memory slicing through the fog of her mind. Flashes of headlights, a man's silhouette against the rain-slicked window, his voice a thunder she couldn't escape. Her breaths came in shallow gasps, the salt air turning bitter on her tongue, her fingers tracing invisible lines on the book's cover, drawing the dog again in her imagination, his eyes steady anchors in the chaos. Elise knelt, her voice a soft murmur lost in the roar of Bella's silence. "It's okay, baby, just a noise," she whispered, reaching out. But Bella flinched, retreating deeper into her shell, the world narrowing to the pounding of her heart and the ghost of that shadow she couldn't name. Elise's touch hovered uncertain as Bella's eyes glazed over, locked in a private hurricane where words drowned before they could surface. The room felt smaller, the fog outside pressing in like an accusation, amplifying the quiet aftermath of her unraveling. Night fell like a veil over the house, the fog thickening into a shroud that blurred the edges of the world. Elise tucked Bella into bed, smoothing the blanket over her small form, the girl's sketchbook resting on the nightstand like a sentinel. Bella's eyes, wide and unblinking, darted to the window, where the mist swirled in ghostly patterns, a glint, two amber points piercing the haze from the yard below, steady and knowing. Him, Bella thought, her finger lifting slowly to point, a whisper escaping her lips. Him. Elise turned, peering into the nothingness, seeing only shadows dancing in the wind. "There's nothing there, sweetie," she said, but her voice wavered, a chill crawling up her spine. The eyes vanished as quickly as they appeared, leaving the air heavy with unspoken promise, a thread pulling taut between the drawn dog and the real one waiting in the dark. Elise leaned against the kitchen counter, the cold granite biting into her palms like a reminder of everything she'd lost. 2 years ago, the house had been alive with David's laughter, his broad shoulders filling the door frame as he scooped Bella up, her giggles echoing like sunlight through the fog. He was a fisherman, hands calloused from nets and ropes, but gentle when he traced Bella's drawings, encouraging her silent world with whispers of, "That's my girl." Then came the night, the storm howling like a beast, the phone call slicing through the rain, accident on the pier car veered off into the waves. "Why were you out so late?" Elise's mind screamed in the quiet hours, after regret pooling like the salt water that claimed him. She hadn't known about the argument, the shadowy figure Bella drew obsessively, now a man lurking in the edges of her art. David's death left a void, sucking the color from their lives. Elise's once vibrant eyes dulled her days, a mechanical march through grief. Bella stopped speaking that night, her words swallowed by the trauma she couldn't name. retreating into sketches that haunted Elise like ghosts. Elise leaned against the kitchen counter, the cold granite biting into her palms like a reminder of everything she'd lost. 2 years ago, the house had been alive with David's laughter, his broad shoulders filling the doorframe as he scooped Bella up her giggles, echoing like sunlight through the fog. He was a fisherman, hands calloused from nets and ropes, but gentle when he traced Bella's drawings, encouraging her silent world with whispers of, "That's my girl." Then came the night, the storm howling like a beast. The phone call slicing through the rain accident on the pier car veered off into the waves. "Why were you out so late?" Elise's mind screamed in the quiet hours after regret pooling like the salt water that claimed him. She hadn't known about the argument, the shadowy figure Bella drew obsessively, now a man lurking in the edges of her art. David's death left a void, sucking the color from their lives. Elise's once vibrant eyes dulled her days, a mechanical march through grief. Bella stopped speaking that night, her words swallowed by the trauma she couldn't name, retreating into sketches that haunted Elise like ghosts. Shadow had known loyalty like a second skin woven into his bones from the day David found him as a pup, abandoned by the pier where waves crashed like accusations. David's hands were kind, calloused from hauling nets, but gentle in their strokes along Shadow's flank, teaching him commands with whispers and treats, turning the stray into a guardian. They roamed the coastal paths together. Shadow's ears pricked for danger, his bark a shield against the town's undercurrents, rumors of shady deals on the docks, figures lurking in the fog. But that night 2 years ago changed everything. David had slipped out late, Shadow, whining at the door, sensing the storm's malice. The argument echoed in Shadow's memory, a man's voice raised sharp like breaking glass. David's tense replies cut short by the slam of a car door. Shadow had bolted after him, paws pounding the wet pavement, but the crash came too soon, metal twisting into the sea's embrace. Betrayed by the waves that stole his master, Shadow was left scarred, a gash across his muzzle from debris, his trust fractured like the pier's splintered wood. From opposite sides of the fogged window, Bella and Shadow observed each other like reflections in a cracked mirror, their emptiness echoing in the quiet spaces between. Bella's small hands pressed against the glass, her breath creating cloudy blooms that obscured Shadow's form. His head tilted, low ears flattened in cautious surrender. "He's like me." Bella's thoughts whispered fragmented images of loneliness, empty chairs at dinner, the pier's endless gray mirroring Shadow's own hollow gaze scarred by nights alone under the same relentless sky. Shadow didn't approach his body, a statue in the mist muscles tensed from betrayal's lessons, yet his eyes held steady on the girl, sensing her pain like a familiar scent on the wind. Elise hovered nearby, her skepticism a veil over growing curiosity, watching as Bella's fingers traced the dog's outline on the pane, a silent dialogue unfolding without words. Their wariness was mutual. Bella flinched at sudden movements outside Shadow's tail, tucked at the creak of the house, settling both armored in silence against a world that had stolen their voices. In this mirrored void, recognition bloomed subtly. Bella's drawings grew softer, Shadow's posture easing fractionally, their shared isolation, a bridge forming in the fog. Elise felt it too, a pull in her chest, as if David's absence had carved matching hollows in them, all waiting for something to fill the space. The storm rolled in like a thief thunder, rumbling low over the coastal town, turning the fog into sheets of driving rain that hammered the roof like insistent fingers. Bella pressed her nose to the window, her breath fogging the glass in rapid bursts, her eyes widening at the shape materializing in the yard, a German shepherd soaked to the bone, his fur plastered against ribs that rose and fell with labored breaths. Shadow stood there unmoving, his amber eyes locking onto Bella's through the downpour, a jolt of recognition passing like lightning between them. The wind howled, whipping leaves and debris across the overgrown lawn, the air thick with the scent of wet earth and salt urgency building, as Shadow shivered, his paws sinking into the mud. Elise glanced out, her heart skipping at the sight, the dog from Bella's drawings alive and trembling as if summoned from the page. Bella's hand slapped the glass, a small cry escaping her lips, her body leaning forward as if pulled by an invisible string. Chaos swirled around them, rain lashing the fence, thunder cracking like a whip. Shadow's whine cutting through the noise, faint but piercing. Bella bolted for the door, ignoring Elise's sharp call, her bare feet splashing into the storm, drawn to the dog whose eyes held the same haunted depth as her sketches. The urgency peaked sensory overload, crashing like waves, cold rain on skin, the metallic tang of ozone. Shadow's cautious step forward, his head low but unyielding. Elise froze in the doorway, rain splattering her arms as Bella knelt in the mud, her small hand extended toward the drenched dog. What if he's dangerous? We can't afford a vet, or worse, rabies bites the mess of it all. Her mind raced, logic clashing with the pull in her chest at Bella's rare, unguarded expression. Shadow's eyes flicked to Elise, wary and assessing his body tense like a coiled spring water dripping from his muzzle in rhythmic patters that echoed her pounding heart. Compassion stirred unbidden. David would have taken him in without a thought, his soft spot for strays a memory that stung. But fear gripped tighter Bella's fragility, the unknown scars on the dog's flank, the storm's fury mirroring her internal storm. "Bella, come back inside," she called, voice cracking, but the girl didn't move her fingers inches from Shadow's nose. A whine escaped the dog, soft and pleading, tipping the scale ever so slightly. Elise's internal argument waged on practicality, screaming no empathy, whispering yes, until Bella's glance-back eyes, pleading, shifted something deep within. Elise's hand trembled on the doorknob, rain sluicing down her arm as she twisted it open, the creak lost in the storm's roar. Shadow hesitated at the threshold, his paws leaving muddy prints on the porch, eyes darting between Bella's outstretched hand and Elise's tense stance. "Come on, boy." Elise muttered, her voice barely audible over the wind surprise flooding her at her own words, commitment slipping out like an exhaled breath. Bella scooted back, making space, her soaked dress clinging like a second skin, her face alight with a rare urgency that pierced Elise's doubt. The dog stepped inside, imperfect and wild, shaking water in arcs that splattered the walls, his coat reeking of wet earth and salt. Messy trails marked his path, puddles forming under his paws, but the act felt raw and real, a barrier crumbling as Shadow circled once and sat, his gaze fixed on Bella. Elise closed the door against the gale, her heart pounding, the decision sealing like a latch clicking into place, irrevocable now, the stray no longer outside but woven into their fragile world. Inside the house, transformed under the weight of their impulsive choice, the air thick with the scent of wet fur and rain-soaked wood. Elise rummaged for towels, her movements frantic, draping one over Shadow's back as he stood, rigid water pooling on the floorboards in dark stains. Bella knelt nearby, her hands hovering, offering a bowl of water sloshed from the sink, messy spilling over the edges, but Shadow lapped tentatively, his tongue flicking with caution. He's here, real, not just lines on paper. Bella's mind hummed a spark of something warm cutting through her usual fog. Elise watched, her skepticism cracking as Shadow's eyes softened, a subtle shift from wariness to acceptance, his tail giving a single hesitant thump. The rescue unfolded in fragments, Elise fetching kibble from a forgotten bag in the pantry, impulsive and unprepared. Shadow sniffing it warily before eating crumbs scattering like confetti. A promise formed in the silence, Elise murmuring, "We'll figure this out," her words binding them, irreversible as the door's latch. Shadow settled in a corner, his presence a quiet anchor. Bella inching closer, their bond, nascent but unbreakable, healing's first thread stitching through the chaos. The morning light filtered through the fogged windows, like a hesitant visitor casting long shadows across the living room, where Shadow had claimed his corner, a fortress of old blankets and distance. He lay there, body coiled like a spring under fur, his amber eyes tracking every movement, Bella's soft steps as she entered with her sketchbook, Elise's cautious pour of kibble into a bowl placed just out of reach, strangers all noise and hands. Shadow's instincts hummed, a low growl rumbling in his throat when Elise ventured too close, the sound, a barrier woven from betrayal's threads. Bella sat cross-legged on the floor, feet away, her crayons whispering over paper, drawing him again, but not approaching, her own wariness a mirror to his. He's real. But what if he leaves like Daddy? The air hung heavy with guarded silence, the scent of rain-soaked wood mingling with Shadow's damp fur, a standoff where neither initiated, only observed. Elise respected the invisible line, her skepticism lingering like the coastal mist, watching as Bella's glances toward the dog grew longer, softer yet still laced with fear. Shadow's ears twitched at every creak, his tail tucked tight, memories of kicks and abandonment flashing like distant lightning. Hours stretched the room, a canvas of tentative peace. Bella's drawings piling up, each one capturing his guarded posture, a silent dialogue building in the spaces between them. No touches, no words, just the quiet rhythm of breaths, sinking unknowingly, a cold distance that felt like the edge of a cliff, promising either fall or flight. Shadow's limp emerged, like a hidden scar surfacing his paw, leaving faint crimson smudges on the floorboards as he shifted in his corner, a wince hidden behind stoic eyes. Bella noticed first her sketch pausing mid-stroke, the crayon hovering as she tilted her head. Hurt like my inside scratches. The air thickened with the metallic tang of blood, subtle but piercing, drawing Elise from the kitchen with a frown etching deeper lines on her face. Shadow recoiled slightly as they approached, a soft whine escaping his body, tensing against the vulnerability, memories of rough hands and thrown stones flooding back like the tide. Bella knelt, her small hand steady for once, pointing to the jagged cut embedded with gravel, her silence speaking volumes. Elise fetched a bowl of warm water and cloth, her movements gentle but hesitant, whispering, "Easy, boy," as she reached out, compassion overriding doubt. Shadow allowed it. His breath-hitching eyes locked on Bella's as she mirrored his stillness. Her own unspoken wounds, flashes of that shadowy night resonating in the quiet. The cleaning was intimate water, swirling pink shadows flinch, echoing Bella's internal tremors, their shared suffering a bridge forming without fanfare. Elise watched, her heart softening as Bella's fingers brushed near, not touching but closed the dog's tension, easing fractionally, a silent presence binding their pains like threads in a tapestry. The crayon snapped under Bella's pressure, the sharp crack echoing like a distant thunderclap in the quiet room, sending her mind tumbling back into the fog of that fateful night. Loud voices, Daddy's face tight, the shadow man pointing car keys jingling like chains, her thoughts fragmented images, flashing headlights cutting through rain, a shove in the dark, the pier's edge slick and unforgiving. Shadow's head lifted from his paws, ears perking at the sound, his own memory stirring David's tense whispers, the stranger's raised voice. Shadow's bark silenced by a kick that left him cowering. Bella's breath hitched, her small body rocking, but Shadow edged closer, his nose nudging the broken pieces, a gentle gesture that grounded her, pulling her from the abyss. Elise paused in the doorway, watching as Bella's trembling fingers reached out, not quite touching the dog's presence, a balm on her raw nerves. The flashback tied them tighter, Bella's drawings now including faint shadows mirroring Shadow's scarred muzzle, emotional threads weaving without utterance. A pause, then acceptance. Bella picked up a new crayon, sketching Shadow's form over the broken one, his steady gaze a silent assurance that the past's ghosts could be faced together. Sunlight pierced the fog for the first time in days, slanting through the window like a tentative promise, warming the room where Bella sat with her sandwich crusts torn into small pieces. Shadow watched from his corner, his nose twitching at the scent of peanut butter and bread, hunger warring with caution in his amber eyes. Bella hesitated, her internal world shifting. "He looks hungry, like I feel empty sometimes," then extended a piece, palm up, the gesture, simple yet profound. Shadow approached slowly, paused silent on the floor, his tail giving a faint wag as he sniffed, then took the offering, gently, teeth grazing her skin like a whisper. The house seemed to exhale the air lighter, Elise's breath catching as she saw Bella's lips curve into a rare soft smile, warmth blooming in her chest like forgotten sunlight. Laughter bubbled unexpectedly from Bella, a sound rusty but real, as Shadow's tongue licked crumbs from her fingers, his body relaxing into the moment. Safety enveloped them, the shared meal, a spark igniting joy. Shadow's playful nudge, Bella's giggle echoing the space, transforming from cold isolation to a haven of tentative delight. Elise joined subtly, offering more food, her skepticism melting, as the dog's acceptance mirrored Bella's emerging ease, a warmth that chased shadows from the corners. The afternoon sun dipped low, casting golden slivers through the curtains like threads of forgotten warmth, illuminating the living room where Bella sat on the worn rug, her sketchbook open to a fresh page. Shadow had been watching her for hours from his corner, his body a study in gradual thaw muscles, loosening ears no longer pinned flat, his breaths sinking with the soft scratch of her crayons. She's like David, small and quiet, but her eyes see everything. Shadow's instincts murmured a pull deep in his chest, urging him forward past the barriers of betrayal. Bella hummed faintly a melody half-remembered from David's old radio tunes, her fingers tracing Shadow's form on paper, the lines softer now, less haunted. Elise lingered in the kitchen doorway, her coffee mug forgotten in hand, sensing the shift in the air, a fragility blooming like the first bloom after winter's frost. Shadow rose slowly, his paws padding silently across the floor, each step deliberate, his tail low, but not tucked, a tentative olive branch extended. Bella's humming faltered, her eyes widening as he approached, not retreating, but freezing in place, her heart a fluttering bird in her chest. He's coming to me, she thought, fragments of fear, mingling with wonder, memories of that stormy night, fading under the weight of this moment. He paused inches away, his nose twitching at the scent of crayons and peanut butter lingering on her skin, then gently, oh so gently, lowered his head onto her lap, the warmth of his fur seeping through her dress like a long-held sigh. Bella's breath caught her hand, hovering above his ears, trembling as if touching a dream that might shatter. The coastal fog rolled in thicker that evening, muffling the world outside as Bella, Shadow, and Elise ventured into the yard for a tentative walk, the air crisp with salt and unspoken ease. Shadow's ears pricked suddenly, his body stiffening like a wire pulled taut, a low growl rumbling from deep in his chest. As Mr. Carter appeared at the fence, his smile too wide, too practiced. "Nice dog you've got there," he called, but Shadow's hackles rose, his posture alert, and unyielding instinct screaming of danger long buried him. The shadow from that night, the argument's echo. Bella clung to Elise's hand, her free one, burying into Shadow's fur, her drawings flashing in her mind, now darker, with jagged lines around a familiar silhouette. The tension built subtly. Shadow's growl a primal warning, his eyes locked on Carter like lasers through the mist, foreshadowing a threat resurfacing from the past's depths. Elise frowned unease crawling up her spine as Bella's steps faltered, the peaceful interlude shattering into echoes of trauma. The knock came like a thunderclap on the door, sharp and insistent, shattering the fragile peace of the afternoon as sunlight slanted through the windows like accusing fingers. Elise opened it to find Mr. Carter standing there, his smile a thin veneer over eyes that glinted like shards of glass, his voice oozing false warmth. "Just checking on the neighborhood. Elise, heard you took in a stray." Bella, sketching at the table, froze her crayon, tumbling from numb fingers, the sight of him triggering a cascade of buried horrors. The shadow man yelling at Daddy, the car lights flashing red in the rain. Twilight draped the coastal town in bruised purples and grays, the fog creeping like fingers from the sea as Carter returned, his footsteps crunching on the gravel path like bones underfoot, a determined shadow against the fading light. He pounded on the door again, louder this time, his voice slicing through the wood. "Elise, we need to talk about the house. I'll make you a fair offer. It's time you moved on." Elise cracked the door, her face a mask of steel forged in grief, but inside her pulse raced like waves against the pier. Why now, why him? Bella huddled in the corner, her sketchbook clutched like a talisman, drawings spilling out Carter's face, looming over David's car, the accident's truth etched in childish lines. Shadow sensed it first, his body tensing into a coiled spring ears, flattening as Carter pushed the door wider. Stepping inside uninvited, his eyes narrowing at the dog recognition, flashing like lightning, the abuser, confronted by his past's loyal witness. The door's echo faded into the fog-shrouded night. Carter's retreating footsteps swallowed by the mist like a bad dream dissolving at dawn. Elise leaned against the wood, her body heavy with adrenaline's aftermath, breaths coming in ragged whispers that matched the house's creaking settling. Bella remained curled in the corner, her small frame trembling like a leaf caught in the wind's dying gasp, tears streaking her cheeks in silent rivers. Shadow patted over his fur, still bristled, but softening, pressing his warm side against her, a living barrier of fur and muscle that grounded her swirling thoughts. Safe now, he's gone, but the shadow lingers. Bella's arms wrapped around his neck, burying her face in his coat, the scent of wet earth and loyalty seeping into her like a balm, her sobs muffled into quiet hiccups. Night cloaked the coastal house in a veil of impenetrable fog, the kind that turned familiar shapes into lurking phantoms, muffling sounds until they echoed like secrets half heard. Elise lay awake in bed, the sheets twisted around her like unresolved doubts, her ears straining against the silence, broken only by the distant crash of waves, until a faint rustle in the yard pierced the quiet like footsteps testing the gravel's patience. Shadow stirred first, his body rising from Bella's bedside ears, pivoting like radar dishes, a low whine escaping his throat as he paced the room, pause, whispering over the floorboards. Something's out there watching the scent of him again. His instincts flared, hackles rising in a ridge along his spine, body language a silent alarm that set Elise's heart racing. The fog outside thickened into an opaque wall, turning the house into an isolated island as the back door's lock clicked open with a traitor's whisper. Carter's silhouette slipping inside like ink bleeding into water. His breath came in measured huffs, eyes darting through the dim kitchen light, hands gloved and purposeful as he rifled drawers searching for Bella's damning drawings, the ones that sketched his guilt in stark lines. Can't let them ruin everything. His mind snarled, fingers closing around a stack of papers, the pier's edge, and his shadowed form staring back accusingly. Elise stirred upstairs, a creak of the floorboard betraying her wakefulness, but it was Shadow who erupted first, a fury of fur and fangs barreling down the stairs, his barks shattering the night like glass underfoot. In the heart of the maelstrom, with shadows leaping like flames across the walls and the scent of blood hanging thick as fog, Bella stood trembling in the doorway, her small fists clenched around a crumpled drawing, the pier. Carter's face twisted in eternal accusation. Shadow held the line, his body, a bastion between her and the intruder, muscles quivering from the wound, but unyielding. His growls a low thunder that bought precious seconds. Protect her like David would. Shadow's instincts roared, his eyes flicking back to Bella, urging her strength. As Carter advanced, knife raised his voice, a venomous hiss. "Give me those papers, kid, or this ends badly." Elise, phone in hand, dialed frantically, her plea to the operator, a whisper shout. But time stretched thin, the decision hanging like a blade's edge, who would break first. The sirens faded into the fog like receding echoes of a storm leaving the house, wrapped in a hush that felt both fragile and profound, the air still humming with the residue of chaos. Elise moved through the rooms with deliberate slowness, her footsteps soft on the scarred floorboards, tending to Shadow's wound with gauze that whispered against his fur, the metallic tang of antiseptic mingling with the salt breeze slipping through the cracked window. Bella sat on the couch, her small body draped in a blanket like a cocoon, eyes distant but no longer vacant, tracing invisible patterns on the fabric, as if redrawing the night's horrors into something manageable. It's over, but the quiet hurts too. Her thoughts drifted, pauses heavy between breaths, the room's shadows lengthening like exhaled sighs. Shadow lay beside her, his head on her lap, breaths deep and even, a soft whine escaping now and then, his presence a warm anchor in the decompression. Elise paused, wiping her hands on a towel stained with faint red, her own exhaustion settling like dust after a gale. She knelt, brushing Bella's hair, the motion tender, unhurried, long sentences of silence stretching between them. The house breathed with them, creaks settling, fog pressing gently against panes, a peaceful atmosphere cloaking their survival, fragile as dawn's first light. Days blurred into a gentle rhythm, the coastal fog lifting incrementally, like veils from a healing wound, revealing slivers of sun that warmed the house's weary bones. Bella and Shadow moved in tandem now, her small hand often resting on his flank as they navigated the rooms. Breath sinking like a shared pulse, inhale the salt air, exhale the lingering fear. He follows me like I follow him. Bella's mind noted sensory details, anchoring her the soft pat of his paws, mirroring her footsteps, the warmth of his fur under her fingers, steady and reassuring. Elise watched from the kitchen, stirring soup that bubbled with homely scents of herbs and broth, her own healing reflected in the way she no longer flinched at Shadow's, her glances toward them soft, interwoven with gratitude. Shadow's eyes met Bella's in quiet moments, amber depths holding her gaze, a silent conversation, where pain acknowledged pain trust, rebuilding brick by invisible brick. A shared glance in the yard under the dappling light through leaves marked a turning point. Shadow nudged her hand, licking salt from her skin, his tail wagging in lazy arcs, while Bella giggled the soundlight as sea foam. "You're better, too," she thought, her anxiety uncoiling like rope loosening from a dock, mirrored in Shadow's relaxed posture, his scars fading under new fur growth. Elise joined them, kneeling to scratch behind his ears, the three forming a circle of mutual recovery behaviors, entwining, Bella eating more, Shadow playing fetch, with tentative energy, their emotions rising together like tides. The tempo was steady, unhurried mornings, with sketches now brightened by color afternoons, where Shadow lay close during naps, his breathing a lullaby that eased Bella's nightmares. Sensory richness enveloped them, the crunch of kibble, the rustle of pages turning the warmth of sun on fur and skin, interweaving their paths, a quiet bond deepening over time, healing not in grand gestures, but in the everyday weave of presence and patience. The pier stretched into the lifting fog like a finger pointing toward tomorrow. Bella's crayons dancing across the page in the soft afternoon light, her small hand steady, now unburdened. Shadow sat beside her on the weathered bench, his head tilting as she sketched them. Walking side by side, their forms intertwined, her tiny figure leaning into his sturdy frame, eyes meeting in mirrored trust. In the background, faint and ethereal, David's outline emerged not as a shadow, but a gentle guardian, his hand raised in quiet blessing, the lines soft like a memory fading into peace. Bella's breath hitched a single tear tracing her cheek, but it was release, not sorrow. "We're together, all of us." Her thoughts whispered the motion of her hand, a caress on paper, echoing Shadow's warm lean against her leg. Elise approached, her steps hushed, kneeling to see the drawing, her fingers brushing Bella's as tears welled in her eyes, recognition blooming like dawn. "It's beautiful," she murmured, voice thick, the gesture sealing their rebirth, a head resting on a shoulder, a breath shared in the salt air, fear's chains dissolving in the intimate focus of creation.